Kindly put your mobile phones on silent mode. There is interpretation, and kindly fill out the questionnaire for future forums. There is a briefing about also the activities organized by the ECSSR. Thank you. In the name of God Almighty, the most gracious, the most merciful, on behalf of Dr. Jamal Sanad Swedi, Director General of the ECSSR, I would like to welcome you where we meet this evening to listen to a series of a lecture, Pioneers of Reform and Renewal of Religious Thought in the Arab and Muslim Worlds, held by Dr. Abdelhak Azzouzi. He is a professor of international relations and political science. He has founded a number of research centers and institutions, including the Schools of Hope Association and the Moroccan Center for Interdisciplinary Strategic and International Studies, and has contributed in a number of global forums and the Euro-Mediterranean University program. He holds a diploma in political science and a PhD in political science and international relations from the University of Toulouse, France. He is also he holds a number of prizes from the French Ministry of Culture and the Malta Center for Euro-Mediterranean organization. He has a number of volumes on cultural diversity and 9 volumes about the Alliance of Civilizations in 2010. I call on Dr. Abdelhak Azzouzi to relay his lecture. Thank you. In the name of God Almighty, the most gracious, the most merciful, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, I would like to express my happiness when I'm here at this center, which I consider my home. It is one of the great homes where ideas are explored and minds, enlightened minds, are used. And a number of those whom God have given a great mindset and wisdom. Dr. Jamal Sanad Al-Swedi has all the credit. He has strived, and he is national, and he is an advocate for the Arabs to open files for everyone, which also is of interest not only for the UAE, but of interest for everyone, all of the Arab countries. So we would like to express our thanks to him and all his assistants. I've given the subject to talk about a current issue. Why? Because reform is in the gist of everything, and because gist has the salvation for all mankind and humanity. When we talk about any intellectual reform and institutional reform, this really talks about getting rid of the burden of the moment and those which hinder advancement. This insinuates self-criticism and to push forward mankind to think what is behind all doors and to trespass the current issues and to get into the gist of things and issues. Because any attempt, any reform attempt, a renaissance attempt, a developmental advancement attempt should be involved with the mind and modernization. This book Al-Sarab, which really holds so many ideas, or the Mirage, is filled with so many meanings, and has insinuated that with cleverness and shrewdness and with a kind of a strategy, those which were mentioned by the Mirage, Ibn Rushd, when he says in page 19, if you wanted to control someone who's ignorant, you should envelop everything with a religious envelope. And when this philosopher says that trading with religions is a very successful trade in the societies where ignorance hovers, philosophers and scientists and intellectuals in their writings depended on Ibn Rushd, such as Al-Jahili and Abdullah Al-Arwi and Taha Abd al-Rahman depended on him. Al-Jabiri, when he wanted to really have self-criticism, he asked not to sanctify the wrong, misleading alphabets, and asked to really sanctify the mind, because in our opinion and in the opinion of the writer of the Mirage, it is a part of the necessity of belonging and survival. So to reread the self and the legacy is a basis for every reform program and project. But our modern Arab Renaissance, unfortunately, things turned otherwise, and perhaps this is one of the most important factors of its demise until now. I can wonder with you, and we can all wonder, can we achieve any advancement, no matter what kind it is, without a Renaissance mind? No, not at all. A mind which hasn't reviewed comprehensively all its mechanisms, concepts, and visions. I cannot hide anything from any follower, any person who has a mind, that the formation of the Arab mindset in all its dimensions, philosophical dimensions and so on, is the mind. The mind as a tool for theoretical production died by a certain culture which has its own specificities, and its specificity is the Arab culture in particular. This is a culture which holds the history of the Arabs and reflects its own reality or expresses it. Therefore, we should really explain, or there's no hiding from explaining this. We are talking about the independence of the mind. I shall explain this when I talk about the political Islam after or shortly. When the mind is independent and the mindset is independent, so let alone the institutions and the individuals. The book of the Mirage has spoken, emanating from what has occurred and what has happened in a number of organizations when it comes to the Salafists and the Muslim Brotherhood, emanating from a main basis spoken about by Dr. Jamal, and we really teach this in the most important and prestigious universities in political science, that the scientist talks about theoretical stuff, and therefore the book of the Mirage did not really smear anyone, but he spoke of understanding and concepts and theories, which has taken certain deductions to analyze, to explain, and adopt the sociology, science of history, science of jurisprudence, references adopted. But the main thing is the mathematical basis depended upon in the political scientists or sciences. Some might ask, Why do we see, for instance, as Abdullah Azzam, and you have mentioned, Dr. Jamal, in your book when Abdullah Azzam spoke about the jihadists in Afghanistan, and this means Taliban and Al-Qaeda, that they used to depend on Sayyid Qutb books and ask of nothing, even if they were hungry or thirsty and found nothing to eat or drink. Only they wanted to adopt or depend in their own imagination and mind on certain references that they consider sanctified more than the basis or the original, which is the Quran. And here is the problem. Definitely, and the great calamity, of course. Why do I say these words? Because sciences, no matter what they are, if it was separated or it got separated from the original, there will be no jurisprudence, no mind in any field whatsoever. So it is better to take our imagination far away when the sciences are separated from its original aspect. Where will it go? It will become ignorant. We cannot develop biology, for instance, without resorting to the science of the universe and its creations, the botanicals. Can we teach it? Can we teach it regardless of the science of plants? This is the original to go back to the universe. Can we really teach physics without going back to the universe? Not at all. We couldn't have reached the moon and Mars hadn't we not been responsive or responsive to the universe. This is the basis, and this is the rule. Sciences, which we depend on, at its inception, was a dialogue with insights, with the Quran, with the Sunnah. There was a kind of responsiveness for communicating with these studies, and this will be according to the verses approach for the universe. And as the Ulama al-Abbadi says, our colleague, insinuating to the Quranic verses, this dialogue has brought upon a constructive dialogue, definitely, but this dialogue has stopped, and we started depending on writings of those who preceded us, Ibn al-Qayyim, Ibn Taymiyyah, and others, and we fled from the original, which is the Quran. And all those who have read the book The Mirage will find it filled with verses and conversations, hadith, which answers the jihadists who analyze what God forbid and vice versa. So the dialogue has been in the framework of insight. Abdullah Azzam said that those sanctify the books that have been written decades ago after the inspiration has become, and did not resort to the Quran. Those who believe in God have been resorted to all details. The verse is concise. It hasn't been copied at all. Not at all. This is the verse which talks about to the Prophet, and he says, you are not tyrannical. You are talking about verses which we take from the Quran, and they are filled in its first sentences in the next chapters that the Mirage has spoken about. Therefore, the Islamic sciences, unfortunately, has resorted to the blind imitation. And this is our great calamity in our Islamic world. It has been practiced on the mind. We are talking about really modernizing the mind. I shall speak about this afterwards. A number of pressures and hindrances that have been practiced. Instead of mankind saying to his brother, don't really do this to yourself, he tells him, shut up, God will kill you. This is the meaning of the verse. A number of sciences have spoken about this, and results were really negative. With time, they started taking positions that have a certain sanctity and comprehensiveness, complete, holistic, as if they do not commit mistakes, and as if they are whatever they are saying is an inspiration. And this was the calamity. This is the first issue. The second consists of the issues of variables and constants. We, unfortunately, we haven't really invested all our efforts in this endeavor. And we haven't got all the insinuations present in the books talking about this. This is not shown at all, not clear. There is the issue of paradigm, which is the visualizations, the reference frameworks, which lead us to the processes of analysis and thinking, and this haven't been given its right, unfortunately, in the literature that the scientists have adopted in their books. These hindrances has managed the Islamic sciences without resorting to the jurisprudence and creativity. This is a great calamity in itself, which has resulted in polluting the hearts of the young, and including the concepts that Dr. Jamal has spoken about in the Mirage, which is the ignorance or at the time of Al-Jahiliyyah, the Jahili time, and I am talking here I'm thinking about some of the distinguished books written. One who has died almost around 500 Hijra, Abu Hamad al-Ghazali. He has really prophesied what will happen later, because being then takfiri is one of the worst issues that happen to the heart of the people. We can destroy generations in its entirety. What does he say in his book, to the schism between Islam? There are some who really are greedy and really are jealous, and those who really change from the course of the Quran is not right. This is understandable. There is a kind of delay in the mind, which is to resort to really being ignorant. This is a great word which has been said more than 10 decades ago. Daesh, Al-Qaeda, their books and their really sentences are being resorted or subjected and moved by ignorance and words said by mankind and didn't come from Sunnah or the books. Right with them is the right, and those who object them are wrong and oppose them completely. And when he is, or when someone differs in their perspective and vision, they are dead. Children, 12, 13, 14 years of age, access to the internet, to Google, their minds get polluted and start really implementing suicide attacks. This is a great calamity due to this takfiri pollution. The speaker is talking about the proverb where ignorance is the main problem, he says, and talking about ignorance which might resort to calamities, and if the rules are not applied, we shall reach ignorance. If you take the books of Al-Shafi'i and others, they have chapters of al-takfir. This is legitimate, but you have no right to come mankind and to start really judging another person by death. You have no right to do that. When we talk about those who have really these jihadists and Islamic organizations which have merged religion with politics and vice versa, is the independence of the mind, the enlightened mind, or the resignation of the enlightened mind, which has developed different nations and left our nations in demise and dismay. All generations have really tried everything, Renaissance, Renewal, and so on. If I say that the Western civilization saw of this earthquake and hurricane being main basis for knowledge and modernity and construction, the book of Mirage is filled in the beginning of its chapters with carrying out a comparative study between the fifth generation or fifth decade and between the fifth decade and other decades. When we take Descartes, Spinoza, Condorcet, and Diderot, from the 17th and 18th century, when you take Hegel, Adam Smith, when you take Voltaire, when you take all those philosophers and really enlightened scientists, Montesquieu, for instance, the only thing that they've spoken about is the mind, the use of the mind. They say that it is necessary to create an advancement, a system which believes in the holistic mind, even if the names are different, because the UK or British experience is different than that of the French, of the Americans. And every country has its own historical, religious, political legacy. But this did not keep other countries, such as Germany, which had religious parties. It stayed until the 20th century, and then it turned into really reserved parties by using the mind. When you compare and you criticize that to enable them to understand the normal truth of things, the relationship of mankind with his or her own society and the creator, and to answer the church, which was practicing its devilish works on the religion until the Westerners really got sick of the Christian religion due to their hatred of the church. But does this mean we should relinquish our religion? No. I shall talk to you about a certain analysis, a very strong analysis done by Taha Abdelrahman. I like what he spoke about when he spoke about the difference between them and us, between the Islamic and Arab nation and the West, and how can we create a certain intellectual, emotional earthquake without really leaping into the conditions of modernity. When he studied all these experiences, similar to Dr. Jamal, he said that there are three main pillars that the ideas and the countries and the institutions and generations should be based upon. The principle of al-rushd is criticism and and comprehensiveness. This principle aims at being independent on certain people to get rid of those who are really imposing, and the presence, such as we're talking about Daesh, al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, the front of Al-Sham liberation, all those people. The Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, they wanted to reach, but they resorted not on the Turkish experience, but on the Iranian experience, because they delegated themselves. And this is the delegation. It is risky on religion and politics, towards politics and religion, and vice versa is dangerous on religion and politics. The country in itself, now Iran, they have the sanctity, the al-faqih, so they cannot be smeared or criticized. All the governmental institutions are under his interest and his control, because there is no medium between you and God, as Dr. Jamal has mentioned. Who are you, mankind, to really say that you have the sanctity? The sanctity is for God alone. And from here, the words of those who lived in the al-Jahili area, the principle of criticism, which says that the practice of criticism should be a practice in all parts of life. This criticism, and we are talking here about the al-Ruwad in the pioneers in the history of Islam, such as Muhammad Abdo, where Dr. Jamal has spoken about. Dr. Muhammad Abdo, for instance, or Al-Afghani, who called on liberating the mind from the hindrances to reach safety. Why? Because we are talking about enlightenment and reform. What about advancement? If you take the books of political science, comparative political science, which teaches the history of political science and the history of systems and regimes and institutions that we give to our students, when we explain to them these words and simplify them, we say that it is a revolution and the refusal of the current situation and the desire to change this reality. But reform, it means something else. Reform, it means a change and development, not intrinsic in the form of the regime and the social relationships, without really meddling into its basis. And just our friend Ismail Sirajuddin, when he spoke about something very nice for some of the pioneers, Abdelhak and his brother and others, when he wrote an introduction, don't think that we are calling on creating a new Islam or a new religion. No, this word or these words that I've spoken about, to go back to the tolerance of Islam, to the word of God. We have made you a nation which is moderate, where everyone has depended on it. Reform means to create a change without really meddling into things. When the writer of the Mirage has answered the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and all over the world, on the Salafists, on the Jihadists, on all their brothers and sisters, he hasn't really resorted this answer to certain philosophical issues, but he resorted to the Quran. Now start with the first pages. You shall see verses, Quranic verses. What are these verses? He hasn't created them. They are the words of God Almighty. This is the essence. I've told you, any material, if we not bring it back or take it back to the original, then all sciences are dead. And unfortunately, we are depending on certain revisions and certain really references that have been written without really resorting to new sciences and to new deductions and to certain really conversations with insight. So the Quran in itself calls us to be sage, to really practice criticism in all parts of life and simplification in everything that needs accuracy. And thirdly, the concept and the principle of comprehensiveness. So this concept means in the framework of expansion, the essence of expansion in all issues and in all societies, any science, biology, physics, the theories. Any professor explains to his students what is called as science, because there are three issues and three specificities. Science should be branched out, because the truth, the comprehensive truth, is for God. Science is the productive science, which offers something to the society. And then science in the law of reason, understanding and explaining, and explaining in a comprehensive manner. This principle of comprehensiveness means that everyone has understood since old times that the use of religion in politics is very bad for institutions, and vice versa also is very bad for institutions and the country. Why? Because the country has pillars, it manages the public affairs, and there's no place for religion. When you really put religion into politics, you are bringing the principle of conflict, which explains politics, because it is the art of managing conflict, and enters this parasite into religion. And here lies the big problem and the big calamity. And therefore, the writer of the Mirage has spoken about this when he spoken about the gist of the problems. We do not care to talk about what Al-Kawakibi and Al-Tunisi and Halal Al-Fassi and Al-Afghani and others, they have books published definitely about this, but they used to call the principle of modernity. They really built the gist of modernity, where we are managing or adapting according to its political, historical, geographical essence, but the spirit of modernity remains one and can be comprehensive. Since inception and since ever, politics and religion cannot really meet in managing and operating the state. This is the principle of comprehensiveness. To manage the public affairs goes to managing the people, elections, parliamentarians and parliaments and shura councils. This is part of the comprehensiveness principles. You cannot relinquish it, and it has been proven in this concept that delegating someone cannot be for everyone's sanctity, cannot be for everyone. Sanctity only is for God. Who are you to come and say that I have the delegation on behalf of God, meaning that if you are wrong, you are right. and if whatever wrong you do, you are right, and those who oppose you, he is wrong. And this delegation in political science, so that people might not think that we are against those people who use religion in politics, and everything is opposed in the field of public policy. Touris bin Ali, I will give an example. When there was a party, in political science, we say that it is a hegemonic party in the field of politics. There is a party headed by the president, and he is the chairman of the party, and other parties present are only for protocol reasons. This is not allowed. Why? Because the field of public policy has parties that govern and opposition. And this opposition opposes. So Bin Ali, no party opposed him. If any party would oppose the party of democratic constitutional gathering, they are opposing its chairman, which means the president of the country. From 1989 until 2010, this was a calamity because there was a kind of control over everything. Control is prohibited. No one should have this control or to enjoy this control and govern alone because he is sanctified over others. No. Therefore, the practice of the mind and the use of the mind and to be sage and wise for everything needs further constraints and further control. So the specificities of the modernity is a very mature and critical spirit and comprehensive. Then I said that before we finish this lecture, I've spoken about the spirit of modernity. If I'm asked a question, if I want to become the president of Harvard or Cambridge, what is the only deduction or conclusion that you might have after reading the book The Mirage? One word, in one word. What is the conclusion in one word? Wisdom. God gives wisdom for people whom he wants to give wisdom. If we want one conclusion from everything which has been said or aforementioned through tackling the ideas of those who are enlightened in the Arab world and in the Western world alike, through thinking of a drastic reform in our modern history emanating from the current situation, current issues, and its mechanisms. It is a necessity to commit to wisdom in the building of or the establishment of the institutions and in really finding our path in criticism. Wisdom is everything and is an intrinsic part. And as specialists in the field of political science and international relations, and the writer of the Mirage has a role to play in this field, even if built upon really approaches, comprehensive approaches. Wisdom is of vital importance, and it quenches the third of reform, and it is part of the public reform. It creates trust between people and those who govern them, even if it emanates from the best voting. If there's no trust, there's no country. No trust, no country. I go back to the government of Berlusconi in Italy, Zapatero in Spain, previous governments in Greece. These have been elected democratically, intrinsically democratically, which goes back to really decades. But when the ruler did not really create the trust, the citizens wanted to bail out, and they called for new elections. Wisdom builds public policy on really intrinsic pillars and makes the mind Renaissance mind and makes of the society a just and equal society, and of the political system and the legislative and political institutions that are built and just to the spirit of modernity with the future. This lecture and this subject which I have been given to talk about does not aim at talking about books, lots of books filled with ideas, of course, but these books, reform books, enlightened books, gather on really relinquishing this blind trust and relinquishing all the ignorance. This wisdom is the spirit of modernity. It adjusts with the reality and the specificities of every country on its own. Libya is not Tunisia, and Tunisia is not Algeria, and Morocco is not Jordan, and the UAE is not Qatar, and Qatar is not Saudi Arabia, and France is not Britain, and Britain is not Germany, and Germany is not the USA. Every country has its own specificities, but some of the countries, such as the Western countries, gathered on wisdom in managing the public opinion and building everything emanating from wisdom. And it has been proven definitely for everyone that the good system is the one based on trust between everyone. And as such, countries have been built and prosperity have been given to the peoples. And in our nations, religion is for everyone, and religion is a key and a gift, and no one should control the people shouldn't control anyone by putting religion into politics and vice versa. Those built on managing the difference and representation is of vital importance, but it is successful in certain nations and it fails in other nations due to the absence of wisdom. There were votes in some countries, but in the absence of wisdom, it hasn't happened. This is the main and the main problem, to really work out the tools of political science is the way for a safe haven. The wisdom is of vital importance. I call it wisdom. Let's take the example of Tunis, Ben Ali in Tunis, Bashar al-Assad in Syria. Even if they had the wisdom, history would have really registered their ways and their methods and path, but authoritarianism have blinded them, ignorance have blinded them, and they lost wisdom. And why the humanitarian sciences have developed so that we don't really imitate. Why? Because wisdom has been absent, and the crisis, ladies and gentlemen, our problem, ladies and gentlemen, the crisis, ladies and gentlemen, is a crisis of interpretation. It is not anything else. It is mainly a problem of interpretation, interpreting so many things because we have no wisdom. It's absent. It is a crisis of vision and not anything else. It is a crisis of vision, and when a kind of follow-up towards the call for sanctity, sometimes it is due to the lack and absence of wisdom, and when all pressures are practiced on mankind, this is due to the absence of wisdom, and when variables and changes and constants are put in one single basket, this is due to the absence of wisdom. The path of changes that should be really based on jurisprudence and the areas of creativity has been absent. And when some of the Islamic parties say that they follow the Salafists and so on due to the absence of wisdom. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you for your kind attention. I've been told that my lecture should not trespass 40 minutes, and I want to be fair with the chairman of the lecture. I haven't really trespassed 40 minutes, not even in 1 minute. I would like to express my thanks completely, and I leave the door open for discussion.
شكرا للدكتور عبدالحق.
Thank you, Dr. Abdelhak Azzouzi, for this valuable lecture. We open the floor for Q&A. Kindly introduce yourselves and be brief in your question. Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. You have focused that we should depend on the mind and on wisdom. Don't you think that emotions and positiveness is not used a lot, but it is used in a negative way? Emotions are used in a negative way. Those who use emotions really resort to hatred and love of the self, and other religions. Really, we are suffering due to this. We should focus on positivity, which supports the mind and the wisdom. There is no methodology which speaks of the irrational, which really defines a positive behavior to reform societies. Thank you. I shall put this question in another question. You are right. When we want to really describe what is happiness and want to being moderate and to amend the educational methodologies or programs. It is part of the positive path in our Arab nations. 3 days ago in Morocco, the king in his speech in a ministerial meeting called on the necessity to repeat this educational system which is being taught for schools and for children in schools, and to reform it completely. And Morocco and the UAE are known completely with the moderate system and regime, and they are known for being moderate regimes in the Arab world. This is an earthquake which might save generations completely. Why? Because the main essence, the main gist in reform comes from school. The school constitutes and reforms generations, educates generations, and upbrings generations. When we see in the new UAE governmental shake-up by adding 2 ministries, the Ministry of Happiness and the Ministry of Tolerance. Tolerance means that those who follow the Emirati affairs aren't you following? It is tolerance is against takfiris, is against relinquishing the other, is building the common household, common families, not to see the other as your enemy. You are all equal. We are all equal. This is the concept of tolerance and the positive emotions that I've understood. This is what is needed. Thank you. Ahmed, I am a researcher. You have spoken during your lecture that the intellectual changes in Europe through the emergence of a number of intellectuals and philosophers at the end of the 14th century, those who called on activating the mind. Of course, this has led to the activation of the mind in the Christian area and the emergence of so many things. This question has been asked. The court of inspection is to really bring about the day of resurrection. And also the day of resurrection is the paradise. Those who have been believed in. Is this the essence of Christianity? And Martin Luther came about, and the presence or emergence of Protestants. Can we link what has emerged in Europe and the Christian world with what will be emerged in the Islamic world with the presence of Daesh? The question has been asked, of course, after the 14th Hijra, maybe in the same, it has emerged already. It will not be emerging at later stages as emerged. The Daesh and the political Islam. Is this the essence of Islam? And therefore, we will activate the mind instead of resorting to solving the problems to really some other things. Dr. Jamal, in his book, The Mirage, has used verses from the Quran. Those who kill on purpose, they will go to hell, and God will not be happy. And he resorted to another verse of, well, those who killed a spirit on purpose, they have killed everyone. Who said these words? God Almighty. Verses written in form of Arabic language. It's very clear, very transparent. This is the only interpretation for these verses. To kill an innocent life in the name of things that you believe in. This is not Islam. Now, the comparison that you have settled between the Christian experience is completely different than that of the religious Islamic experience. The Christian experience was very difficult, because they had the mediator, which was the church, between the Western mankind and between God. When it became a mediator, it got rich, and when a church was a mediator, it really burnt science libraries. Those who used to say otherwise, they used to be killed. These books call for enlightenment. They used to be burnt and crossed. The church got rich. It invested with businessmen who have got rich buying lands. They have now farms and others, and the word that is taken from a church is sanctity or sanctified, because they give forgiveness and they are a mediator between mankind and God. But there's no mediator. There is no mediator between God and the worshippers. Dr. Jamal and me in my lecture, we haven't really spoken about the experience of church, but only to say that we should use the mind. When they fought the church, they fought it by the use of the mind. We are not fighting Islam, or else we wouldn't have been Islam. We are really fighting Sunnah, Al-Quran. This is true takfir. We are fighting by using the mind. Those who wanted to really talk about religion, enclosed religion, killing people, the lives of people emanating from certain words spoken by mankind and not by God. This is the essence or the gist of the comparison. And Dr. Jamal has spoken. Really, why are we comparing between the Christian experience and others? No, they are not being compared, because the same events should occur. No, this is unbelievable. This is impossible. This is a very dangerous word, or else I wouldn't be here making this comparison. To ask to use the mind in reforming what is a variable at the moment. The nations now have been variable, emanating from creating science by the church for industry, for commerce, for the relationship of the worshippers with God, and the track and journey of mankind has been changed by not using the mind or really resorting to words adopted by mankind and not by God or the prophet, and they've given these words a certain sanctity and they used it as a means to reach their own objectives, such as to use it in the political parties or in the jihadists organizations and systems, but to really compare the reality of the Islamic religion with another reality of the church starting from the 15th century is wrong and impossible. Thank you, Doctor, for this valuable lecture. My name is Taysir Sulaiman. In reality, Doctor, emanating from the old proverb, really, if you really work on schism, you will succeed. Through the protectorate, they are keen on keeping our region in schism and in instability is to remain really in control when it comes to their power and control on the region. And that these takfiri criminal organizations, which are bad for religion, and with the support of the West. My question here is, what is the religious speech that we need to change? This is the first. What is the face of the religious speech which we ask to change? My question is the following. What is asked of us? What is the religious speech which is asked at the moment and which is asked to the West? Second, what is the role of politics if we want to have politics and religion separated? What is the role of politicians in the country? I'm not one of those who believe in this mentality to create a schism. These words are said by people such as those who refuse democracy in the name of the Israeli presence and the Zionist presence for decades, and we should create a development, economy or economic development before opening the way for public politics. In the field of strategy in the international relations, to create a schism is a theory given by the neoconservatists, but to really bring about or manage the nations and the countries is based on really mathematical rules and pillars. You cannot really think of a driver, taxi driver, for instance, to really drive a plane, or a scientist to do something else. So this field of political aspect has its own realities. When it fails, we say that the Western is behind this, emanating from this word, create a schism. Now, Daesh are hitting the heart of Europe and all the countries of the world. If it were their objective, they wouldn't have hit them in the basis of our countries. The problem is from within us. We cannot really blame others this aspect or to create a schism. If you want to really when Israel wanted to create this schism, they wanted this. They wanted to be separated. No one obliged them. They wanted this. When Hamas came and brought together politics into religion and so on and so forth, this happened. The Palestinians fell apart. If they didn't want this, the Israelis wouldn't have succeeded. In the history of relations between countries since ever, this issue creates a schism. This doesn't mean that we should really blame others. And these men, the role of men in politics, Plato, Aristotle, they have the art of managing conflict emanating from main rules. And religion is good for people, for your relationship between you and God, the creator, a religion of tolerance, brotherhood, and so on. Politics is something else. It is an art of managing conflict, or what is different. If you give government the control of this governance forever, this will become a catastrophe. Therefore, there are elections. You take decisions, and the opposition opposes, and there's another election going on. There will come a day where you will vote on the opposition. They have other developmental ideas in the field of public policy. Different interests interfere and interlap. These different interests is politics, where really political lies erupt. Religion is far away from that. Far away from that. A very simple example. The French Ministry of Justice resigned. Christine Taubira, great chaos occurred in Europe. Ministry of Justice means number 3 or 4 in the French government. This is huge. She resigned because the parliament have been given a draft law to really withdraw the nationality from those who have been proven that they are practicing terrorism. She said, in the name of Descartes and Spinoza and Voltaire, I cannot be in a government that believes in that. She created an art of managing the difference a year before the presidential elections, and created a book from 120 pages published in Spain so that no one would look at it from the intelligence or parties in the government and the opposition parties. And when she resigned, the book was sold 40,000 copies. This is politics. It is cleverness and difference. Religion is far away from lying, far away from being different, and far away from conflicts. And this conflict, this political diplomacy is not really something easy, but they are intrinsic rules inside politics, public policy. Don't think that you are sitting in Britain in the ministry. The minister is talking and the opposition is really applauding, or else it wouldn't be called opposition. The opposition is an institution in itself. Its main objective is to wait those who are in the government, either in the parliament or in the government or in any governmental entity, to really bring about certain policies or different policies, so that the people would hear that this government have all the mistakes, and if you really vote on it later, this and this will happen. This is politics. This is the objective of the politicians in this field. Thank you, Doctor. At the end of this lecture, I would like to reiterate on behalf of Dr. Jamal Sanad Aswaidi, Director General of the ECSSR, all the thanks and appreciation for Dr. Abdelhak Azzouzi, and for you, ladies and gentlemen, awaiting future lectures. Thank you.